Good evening. Welcome to Injustice Investigations. I am your host, Al Scott. As always, we thank you all for tuning in to our live broadcast tonight. Melissa, good evening to you. Dana, good evening to you as well. And Dana again. Okay. As always, appreciate you all joining us doing our live feed. Dana Hudson is also in the house this evening. Good evening to you also. Um, Tonight, we're dealing with a story that's somewhat mysterious and perplexing. It happened in 2019 when a young man, 33 years old, named Brandon Embry, would lose his life in a very strange way. In the early investigation, police said that he beat himself to death. Well, that makes about as much sense as Donald Duck being president of the United States again. The medical examiner said that he died from pneumonia. I've seen people with pneumonia. I've seen bodies who have died from pneumonia. My brother died from pneumonia. I've also seen bodies where a person has been beaten to death. And that's what happened in this case, in my opinion. Tonight, I'm going to welcome Miss Karen Lee to our show tonight. Good evening, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I am so glad you are here tonight, and we apologize. We had some issues on your end and some on my end as well.
Yes.
But nevertheless, we are here. So to God be the glory for that. First of all, I do again. I want to thank you for coming on. I know I spoke with you shortly after your son was killed, and the emotions were still
Yes.
high, and so we
Yes.
gave you your space.
Yes.
And so finally, we have you on the show. Before we get started, we also agreed, me and Sarah and I, that this could not be one show. I don't know how many parts it's going to be, but this is a very, very serious case. And there are more questions than answers. Sarah and I debated a few days on whether or not to bring up the person who was considered a person of interest. Today, she decided we would do that. We've already sent her picture out, and I'm going to let Sarah go into who the lady is, a little later in the show. So tonight, I, I have to thank your son for serving this country. He
Thank you.
showed his love. You're welcome. He showed his love and courage for the United States, and for that we said thank you, Sarah. If you will, and tell us a little bit about Brandon when he was a child and then into adulthood.
Okay. I always said about Brandon, it was like having 10 little boys in one. He was so much to keep up with. He was very active. He was very smart. He loved his family. He he loved to watch TV. He was introverted, but he was extremely smart from very early on. Very early. We were just baffled. I remember he was just, you know, just a toddler, and he was reading all of these signs, and we were kind of like, how did you know how did you learn to read? It was just pretty remarkable. um, he was a great conversationalist, even from early on. He was always really good with animals. Animals were really drawn to him. I remember when he was a kid, one time we had went to visit friends, and I heard him snickering in the back, and I wasn't sure what he was laughing about, but then I realized that he had taken one of the kittens from the friends that we were visiting and took it home with him. And, just he loved animals. He was just really good with them and very smart. When he was in middle school, he would read the biggest books that I would just be like, wow. He liked the I would say it's kind of like a saga fantasy type genre, and he would read large novels. He was a kind person. He was a genuine person. I remember he played football, and I remember the coach saying about Brandon, he always played like defense and center and stuff like that. And he said Brandon had a lot of heart. And I think that really does describe Brandon a lot. Whatever he was interested in, he put a lot of heart into it. He stayed committed. He was always there for family. Anytime like we needed something, he would always try to help us in any way he could. And, but, on the other hand, I will say that Brandon also sometimes would have that like Eeyore personality, like the glass is half empty kind of personality.
Gotcha.
And that was him. That was who he was. And so we knew that side of him, but you felt good to be around him. He was a genuine person. He really wasn't a conformist. He wasn't like a rebel type, but he just didn't see that he needed to do the things that everybody else, trivial things, if he wasn't into it, he didn't see the need to do that. So he was kind of unique in some ways. And a lot of times I think really introverted people can be that way.
Sounds like me.
But he was, yeah. And he was just, that kind of person that he would do whatever he could to help people. And I know like all of the neighbors at his apartment said that he was always really cordial. He always, said hi, talked to people, just kind of kept to himself, but, was a likable guy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You told me, I think, maybe days before he was killed, that he was at your house keeping the pets or something.
Yes. So I had to go so we live in North Carolina. Okay. Brandon had moved here from Seattle. He had only been in North Carolina about a year, and it was close to Brandon's birthday. So he came over that Friday, and for me, it was going to be a whirlwind trip, just drive up there, get my daughter, come back. And so he watched my dogs for me. That was the last time I saw him, was that day that he came over to watch the dogs. He came through the door. He was always happy to see them. I remember him playing with them, and like I stocked up some food for him, so he had everything for dog sitting. And that was it. That was the last time I saw my son, and it was the day before his birthday.
The day before his birthday?
Was the last day that I saw him, yeah.
Wow. So when you saw Brandon last, was he in good spirits?
Yeah, actually he was. He was playing with the dogs. I had told him there were like steaks. I know he made them because there was like, he didn't wipe the stove down. And I kind of laughed when I came back, and I was like, okay, Brandon's been here and made the steaks. And, he was in good spirits, and I think for his birthday that he was planning to go out. So I talked to him. The last time I saw him was the day before his birthday. And the last time I spoke to him and heard his voice was Saturday on his birthday. And he, I talked to him real quick. I was driving through the mountains, and I don't like to be on the phone through some of those roads. Mm-hmm. So I talked to him kind of briefly. But he was asking what time I would be home. So I kind of thought that maybe he had plans. So by the time that myself and his sister got back home, he was already gone. And I really feel like, so the story is for the females or females that he was supposed to meet was that they canceled. But I kind of wonder if that's really what happened, because I feel like that he would have waited to see his sister if he didn't have other plans.
Okay, we're going to tie this in later, but you said when you and I were speaking that he had recently lost a job, but he
Yes.
was comical about it. It didn't bother him. So
Yes.
okay, so he made jokes about it.
That's correct. So
Okay.
when he came over to watch my dogs Friday, he had just returned from Charlotte, which is where the home office was. I had picked him up from the airport on Thursday, and then he went to work in Charlotte on Friday, and they let him go. And he was just kind of making jokes, and he was kind of like, well, at least I lost my job on my birthday, which it was like the day before. But
Right.
he was just kind of had this sarcastic humor about it. The job loss is a bit of a mystery. They said it was because of a messy hotel room. The hotel had went in his room and took photos of his prescription medications and his belongings when he wasn't in the room, and then sent those to his employer, which is actually against Michigan state law, that they're not supposed to be photographing or recording in
Exactly.
spaces where people have a right to privacy.
Exactly. So, if you will, let's kind of set the scene here, because something troubled you that you knew you needed to go to his apartment, right?
Yes. So,
Okay. So what happened?
okay. So as I said, it was his birthday, and we were traveling. So, um, and then we came home, and he was gone. And I actually had a place in mind that I wanted to take him for his birthday, like take him out to lunch. So I had texted with him a little bit, and I was kind of thinking, like, early in the week, I would see if we could go have lunch. And I got some text from him on Monday, so I didn't ask him to go have lunch because he was saying that his head hurt and that he couldn't move his head up off of the pillow. And I didn't think a whole lot of it because I get migraines. Brandon
Mhm.
would get migraines. So it wasn't super alarming. And I gave him a lot of mom advice, like have some caffeine, take a cold shower, don't get too much sleep, just mom stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and then, just kind of left him to just have some peace and quiet. Um, and then I want to say it was the very next morning, I got a very strange text, and it was very early. I'd never got a text this early from Brandon. So I thought that was really strange.
Okay.
Brennan wasn't one to text me early like that. Um, I had also been calling Brandon,
Mhm.
made a couple of calls. I never got a hold of him. I also had been, at one point, I checked his location. Um, when Brandon drove out to North Carolina, he took a moving truck and brought all of his belongings with him, and he had shared his location with me at that point. And so, not very often, but just a couple of times
Mhm.
I had checked his location. And so this was one, because I thought, well, why isn't he answering? Maybe he's out or something like that. I checked his location, and it would just spin around. It wouldn't give me a location on him. So I thought, well, that's strange. And then I would say it was like the night before I contacted his sister, and I told her, I said, something is not right. Brandon's not answering. I think I need to go check on him first thing in the morning, and then the next morning kind of got a late start, and then she wanted me to wait because of course she wanted to see her brother.
Okay.
And I kind of maybe was pretty worried the night before, and then the next day was trying to push that worry aside and just thinking, okay, we're gonna go over there, and he stayed up playing video games and he's just slept in or something like that, and it's just all gonna be okay. But that's when I start, knocking on the door, knock a little louder, then I'm pounding on the door, rapping on the windows, all the windows. There's the living room windows, the bedroom, or the spare bedroom window is on the front. Nothing. I go around to the back. I'm knocking on the back door, the glass of the back door, and then his bedroom window. In his bedroom window, the outside, it was a double pane, and the outside pane was broken. And his next door neighbor had walked back there with me, and I asked him if he could take the screen off because I thought maybe where the window was broke that I could like yell through there or something and he could hear me.
Right.
And he's still not answering me. I couldn't see anything through. So that's the point that I called 911. And they came and they said they couldn't go in without a key. I didn't have a spare key, so I called the property manager, and they were close by. They bring a key, open the door, let the police in. They find Brandon and then have to call the EMS.
So when they went in and they found your son,
Yes.
they didn't let you go in, right?
No, I was there with my daughter. She had went with me, and neither one of us could go in.
So what did they tell you had happened?
They really didn't say. We could hear them in there working.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm pretty sure it was my daughter, and she was like, "Is my brother okay?" And the police officer was standing in the door, and he kind of goes like this, and we thought that meant that he was already dead. And at that point, my daughter screamed, and just her screaming, it made me scream, and it was just awful. It was terrible. But then they said, no, he's still breathing, and they brought him out. They had asked for a sheet, which scared me again by them asking for a sheet, but they had just like covered him up all the way up to his neck. They had like the oxygen on him, and they called me away from bringing him out. So I didn't get to go up to him or speak to him or anything. And
so he was taken to the hospital.
Yes.
And I think they had to fly him somewhere else.
They were going to life flight him, but for some reason they didn't, and they ended up taking him by ambulance to Greensboro, which is maybe about 40 minutes away. I'm not sure from Asheboro, it might have been closer, 30 to 40 minutes away. So they took him to Greensboro for a higher level of care, and he was on 3 forms of life support.
Wouldn't it have been better, you think, to get in the air and take him there?
Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't. I don't know if it was a medical complication or if the life flight wasn't available. I'm not sure why they ended up doing it by ambulance.
And him and his sister were close.
Yes, they were pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the scene, before we get to your son, how was the apartment? I mean, once you later found out things.
So when the police went inside, they came out and they said, was his apartment messy? They said, what, they were like, was his apartment messy like this? And I was like, yeah, Brandon was a messy guy. Like, yeah, like you're not going to go in there and see a neat freak type of apartment. But I had no idea to the level that they were talking about whatsoever. And later, when I see the crime scene photos, it was just obliterated. Like everything was dumped out. Brennan had been planning to move to Charlotte, which is where that home office was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been over to his apartment, so I kind of knew the shape everything was in and where stuff was, and the stuff that I had boxed up. And the living room had been all boxed up, and then his spare room both had boxes staged. All of that stuff was just everywhere, everything everywhere. In his bedroom, just, I mean, it looked like a bad episode of like a hoarder's
Okay.
type of thing. Like stuff was just piled high.
Okay. Was that in every room?
That was in the living room and the spare room and his bedroom. And then strangely, when I had been over there, the hallway bathroom had like a cart and a lot of his stuff. So I wasn't able to use the hallway bathroom, and I was having to go in his bedroom bathroom. So that's how I knew like kind of the shape that the bedroom was in and stuff like that. But then when I look at the crime scene photos, that hallway bathroom was emptied out. So I thought that was really strange. And the only thing that was really left in that hallway bathroom was a lot of cleaning supplies, including a bottle of bleach on the floor.
Bottle of bleach. Okay. How was his locks made? I mean, how would he get in and out?
The front door and the back door had one deadbolt lock. If you shut the door, you had to lock it with the key. And if you were inside, you could turn the lock. You could turn it with your hand. And the key fit the front and the back. The doorknob did not have a lock on it. It only had the deadbolt. That was the only single lock on the door.
So was his key there?
No, they never found his key. And they actually wrote in the search warrant that they were specifically looking for his house key. They were going to look in his truck for his wallet and his keys to see if the house key was in his vehicle, to see if they could find DNA for who locked the door. So his house key was never found, and he also, early in February, 7 months prior, sent his sister a text that he was looking for his spare key. And that was missing too. That had been missing all the way since February.
Okay.
And then can I add something on about something that really bothered me right from the start was that I kept hearing the police saying Brandon was barricaded in his apartment. And I said, well, what do you mean he's barricaded? And they said, oh, well, that's just a word we use. And I remember like talking to his sister. I was like, what are they saying? That a deadbolt's a barricade? Like what, what is this? And they tried to make out like it was some kind of cop talk or something. But then they actually called his family in Washington State, his brother and his wife, and said that he was heavily barricaded in his apartment. And there was no barricade there. The door was unlocked. They went in, and although the place had been ransacked, there was a clear path to go in. And then on the back door, he had a utility cart on wheels, and it was messy, but there was nothing that you couldn't walk around. And there was at least 2 feet clearance to the back door. There was no barricade. And then as far as for the EMTs, they had to take the bedroom door off to get to Brandon to render aid to him, but his body laying, in the way of the door opening was not a barricade. That's just where he fell, like basically in a coma. They said he was like, gasping for air when they found him. He was barely alive. And a barricade is an intentional blockade to keep someone out. There was no barricade.
Right, and you sent me the pictures, and so there's nothing in there that said he had barricaded himself
No.
in there. I think that's just about super stupid. I'm thinking where he was at the door, I'm just thinking he was trying to get help.
Possibly, yes, trying to make it to the door to get out. Possibly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before we get to his injuries, I was reading something from another podcast that you were on, where it says that one of the officers says he beat his damn self to death. Was that true?
I don't remember that, but I do feel like they were trying to already start this narrative that he was in his apartment going crazy, barricading himself, taking drugs, and self-inflicting injuries, which none of that is true. So
Okay.
I don't know. And it's possible because, my daughter was there too. So I don't know if there was something more, that I didn't hear. But I do feel that they were already going with this narrative. And I will say that when I called 911,
Mm-hmm.
I knew he had been let go from his job. And like I said, I got this strange text from him, and it was very short. It wasn't Brandon's style or anything. But then when he didn't come to the door, I kind of thought, okay, did he do something to hurt himself? Because his vehicle's here, he's not answering, he's lost his job. I've got this strange text. But then once he came out and I saw all the bruising, I didn't think that from that point on anymore. When I saw the bruising and I saw his face, I thought, okay, did he have a fall? And the reason that I was like searching for answers is because I didn't know of him knowing anyone. I didn't know of him having anyone in his apartment, and the door had been locked. So that's where I was left searching for what could have happened to Brandon.
So, one quick question, we're going to get to his injuries. In the beginning, the medical examiner determined cause of death was what?
Pneumonia. And
okay, go ahead.
She had mentioned pneumonia even before the autopsy was finalized. And I will have to say that I put her, tongue-tied, I put her on speakerphone so my husband could hear, what they were finding out about what happened to Brandon. And my husband was so angry, he left. He walked out of the house. Actually, he walked completely out of the house because we knew that pneumonia was not the reason he died. It may have been part of everything that he suffered, but we knew that that was not the reason he died.
Okay, so tell us about the injuries to his body.
They were everywhere. So I later learned that when someone has the two black eyes, what they call the raccoon eyes, that is a symptom of a skull fracture. He also had bruising behind his ear. I think it was the right ear. That is called a battle sign. That's another symptom of skull fracture. The profuse bleeding from the nose is another symptom of skull fracture. The detective told me that he had knots and bruises all over his head, which I didn't see those because he was on life support. So I wasn't back there, you know, there was too much equipment. So I didn't even see all of these things, and I didn't see his backside. And I actually found out there was even more bruising today that I didn't know about. He had severe bruising on his flanks under his arms, and he had bruising on his abdomen. His legs, his thighs, his hands, his upper inner arm, his back, his buttocks, like the whole side. That's what I just learned today, that they said there was excessive bruising on his right buttocks. There was above his just everywhere. He had internal bruising on his lung, and the autopsy had mentioned bruising on his penis, and people said, well, that can be from a catheter. So I didn't think a whole lot of that. Then later I get the autopsy photos, and then I start seeing even more bruising. He had bruises like in the grooves of his neck. Like, I don't know if somebody had wrapped something around his neck, but it was really dark bruising. His testicles were bruised severely, and they didn't even put this in the autopsy. There was probably half or more of the bruising that wasn't even in the autopsy, and there are 4 pages of injuries in the autopsy, and it didn't cover everything.
Wow. Okay. There was a podcast you were on, and they just in their own they described what they saw. Uh, they said it looked as if someone had threw a grenade in their apartment, and then Brandon dived on the grenade.
Yes,
So go ahead.
that's accurate. I mean, it just his bedroom was obliterated, and the bathroom, that when I went into his apartment, the detectives had already been in his apartment cleaning things up, looking for things that he may have been struck with, looking keys, wallet, those things. They kind of went through everything. There was a female clothing. You can see in the crime scene photos, the detective is holding up a bra. And if you really zoom in on the bra, it looks like the bra has been bleached. Ladies will know, like, if it comes in bleach, that it will turn, like if it has dye, the bleach will turn like an orange color. And so you can see the bra strap is like got bleach on it. And it also looks like it has a drop possibly of blood. That's in the crime scene photos. And I had told the detectives he lived alone. I didn't know of anyone being at his apartment. So women's clothing there was out of place. And then going back to, so the detectives had cleaned up, and then my husband and his brother had went in and they had did some cleaning. And I finally said, well, I need to go in. I need to see what they're doing with my son's things, make sure everything's okay, that they're not throwing things away that maybe that I want to keep or something like that. And I go in and I see all the blood on the walls. But it was when I went in the bathroom that I said, something is really wrong. Something just evil happened here. And there was, everything was gone as far as the fixtures, the towel bar, which was the metal, the toilet paper holder, which was metal. None of that was left on the walls. The drywall was caved in. The bathroom vanity was shattered. And then I looked closer, and then I was like, well, there's blood. You can see blood in the vanity, like dripping down. And there was hair in the vanity. And so when I saw that, then I start looking at the walls and I can see blood on the walls and there's like spray. And I told my husband, I said, somebody had been in here cleaning up. And that's when I started asking for the shower curtain because I figure there's probably blood spatter on the shower curtain. And then I figure, well, maybe they must have taken it, but they didn't take it. They took the shower rod, but they didn't take the shower curtain. And that should have been looked at with the way the bathroom was. The heavy toilet tank lid that for the water tank, that was broken half. And I just cannot even imagine how that got broken. That lid is very heavy. The and then the actual toilet seat and lid, those were broken off. The flushing mechanism was broke. The water was out. The toilet was pulled up out of the ground, bringing a tile with it. It was just busted up, broken, blood on the walls, glass broken. Something really, really bad happened in here. And, Brandon fighting for his life. It was really harrowing.
I'm having some audio issues on this side, so
Okay.
I don't know if you brought up this. Was one of the doors kicked off the hinges?
My husband looked closely at the doors, and there were like some pieces of the doors. It also looked like the doors had been wiped down because there was dust on one side of the door, but another side of the door was clean. And I was like, okay, well, Brandon was not cleaning those doors. And the door frame to his bedroom door was busted. And the detective said, well, the EMTs, maybe they did that, but the door frame should not have broke for them to take the door off the hinges. That doesn't seem like that should have happened. The door frame was busted. Yeah. And the closet doors, Brandon had 2 closets in his bedroom, and there was a water heater closet. The doors to the water heater, which are sliding doors, and the way those work, somebody explained to me, but it's like you have to pull them out and lift them up to take them off. And they were neatly stacked together. So after Brandon has been assaulted, because there's a bloody pillow under the doors, someone took those doors off and stacked them up.
Okay. I'm thinking that's a serious crime scene.
Yes.
Uh, and I think they were trying as best they could to stage a scene as if it was a robbery gone bad, I would say. But they were so super stupid that in that one crime scene, it looks as if, well, I've counted 3 different crime scenes. When we look at your son's picture, my opinion, he was beat. He was beat to death. But it wasn't done by one person because your son was a pretty big guy.
Yes.
So I'm thinking there were multiple people that was in there beating him for whatever reason it may be. Now, I know the police have at one time had a person of interest to your son's death, right?
Yes.
And in a minute, we're going to throw some things out here. And so I want you all to really listen to this part because in my mind, I'm thinking this lady that we're about to speak on, if she's not a serial killer, I promise you, she's studying to be one. So, who is this lady, and why do you think she was a person of interest? And I guess all of a sudden they said no, she's not. Case closed.
Yes. So 5 days after my son died, this female, Cassandra, contacts my daughter-in-law, and she sends her a very long message that she is telling her all kinds of details about Brandon's life. It's like Cassandra is trying to confirm who she was and how connected she was to Brandon, and she was indeed Brandon's girlfriend. And it struck my daughter-in-law very strange, but my daughter-in-law let me know that this person contacted her, and Cassandra asked for her clothing, her makeup, and if she could have something of Brandon's. And as soon as I hear of this female and how much she knows about everything about Brandon's life, I think, well, maybe she knows his friends, maybe she knows who was at his apartment, maybe she knows something. So I send her a message the very next day, but I don't hear back from her until close to the end of the month. And
Okay. Did she give a reason as to why it took so long to respond?
no, but I do know the reason why. She actually got on well, as far as I know, she got on a plane and flew back to Maine. And once she was in Maine, out of state, she contacted me.
Wow. Okay. What was there a cop also in the apartment that was standing on blood or cardboard or something?
Yes, in the crime scene photos, Detective Johnson, who was there was Detective Suddeth, who was the lead detective. He's the male detective. And then the female, his partner, Detective Johnson, who would later take over the case. Both of them were there at the crime scene. And there is a photo of Detective Johnson standing on a box. And if you see the crime scene photos, there is a large blood spatter print of my son's head, which is actually a very important piece of evidence, a very important crime scene that really they should have done more with that, because the head print shows that there is about 2 feet of blood spray coming out of the back of Brandon's head, because they state how he was found laying, and this blood is coming out of the back. So they tried to say that he aspirated blood, going back to this pneumonia theory, but he was on his left side. So the blood had to be going out of the back. And the print of his head is very clear. You can see his neck. You can see the lines of his shoulder. You can even see where his nose was. And then the blood spray coming out of the back. The detective took a box and laid it on top of this blood spatter and was standing on it. I just couldn't believe it when I saw that. I was like, what in the world? Like, small children would know if they saw something like that
Exactly.
to not walk on it.
Exactly.
And there was room for her to walk around or to stand in another spot.
Yeah, and that's extremely bad, because we know it is a crime scene. Did Brandon have any defensive wounds?
Yes, he did. He had bruising all over his hands, and he had a cut on his wrist, and I think the cut was about 2 inches, but to me it looked very deep, because I could see what was like the subcutaneous layer coming out. It was jagged, and the detective actually took a pair of handcuffs into evidence that were there at the apartment, because he thought that Brandon had been restrained with those handcuffs, and trying to get out of the handcuffs or to pull away is how he cut his wrist. But he also had small cuts, like what I envision This is my speculation of what they could be from. It was almost like he took his hand trying to protect himself and was getting cut. And one of the theories, like them saying that he self-inflicted any wounds, why would you have wounds, defensive wounds on your hands? Because if you're using some kind of instrument to hit yourself, your hands won't be affected. So it doesn't make any sense. And a lot of this bruising was in places that he absolutely could not reach, and places that, like, he could not put horizontal bruises across the backs of his knees. It's physically impossible.
I know you can't see the comments right now. I'm gonna read something someone just said. It's
Okay.
Tanya Fine, and she says, in reference to the police that was standing on the blood, that detective intentionally contaminated that crime scene. I mean, I would agree with that, because I don't think a rookie would have done that, you know, because, and we know the case is extremely strange. So let's go back to Cassandra. And in your opinion, do you think she had anything to do with the death of your son?
I think she had everything to do with the death of my son. And I don't know if or who she had people helping her, but she had guilty knowledge of the crime scene. And people have said that the guilty knowledge that she had of that crime scene was enough to indict her. She knew things that I didn't know. She knew things that I didn't know until I saw the crime scene photos.
And so we guess the only way she would have known that is if she was there herself.
Yes, exactly.
So at one time she was a person of interest, and then she wasn't, right?
Well, she tells people that she was cleared of the case. I don't know if someone called her from Asheboro Police Department and said you're cleared, or if she just assumed that if she didn't hear back from them that she was cleared. I don't know, but I was never told anything. I was told they questioned her for a couple of hours. She lied to police. She said that she had to go because her dog Toby was in the car waiting for her, and she doesn't have a dog. And there was no dog waiting for her. They said that they needed to check her phone, and they had her drive from Asheboro Police Department to the Randolph County Sheriff's Department. They did a search warrant on her phone. The detective said he would contact me and let me know the results, and we never heard from him. And the next thing we know, asked my husband, I said, can you call and check, because they haven't let us know anything. And he calls and finds out the detective has been promoted, and they said then he was put in traffic. The case was then handed to Detective Johnson, which I knew that it was going to be bad, because when we had went to check the apartment, or not to check it, but to start gathering my son's things, and then we started checking the apartment because we said something bad happened here. I told my husband, I said, you need to call the detectives back over, because it looks like someone was cleaning blood up off these walls. And this female detective said, well, he was taking meth, and that's what meth users do, is clean their own blood off the wall. And I said, he wasn't doing meth.
Okay, and with that being said, the toxicology report, what did they find in Brandon's system?
They found a high level of diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, and she wrote not expected to be toxic. But the problem with the amount of Benadryl is they don't know how much was in his system, because they never bothered to establish a timeline. And Benadryl has like a 9-hour half-life. You can see the detective sweeping up bottles of sleeping pills. And this was another item of guilty knowledge, that I had a recorded conversation with Cassandra talking about these sleeping pills and roundabout trying to insinuate, well, maybe I don't think he took those pills. Do you?
Wow.
And I had no idea. Like, I don't see these 2 bottles of sleeping pills until, like 9, 10 months later when I get the crime scene photos.
And with the apartment the way it was and the bruises on your son, this is just me. I'm thinking that someone should have heard something, right?
Yeah, it seemed we try to figure that out. Like, how did no one hear anything? But I talked to the neighbor right next door to Brandon. Was on an in unit on the bottom,
Mhm.
and it is a brick building, which I think there's a little more soundproof with the brick. And then Brandon's bedroom was on one far end, and the neighbors were on the other end. But also during the day, a lot of people are at school and at work. And then the police really didn't go door to door and ask questions. They didn't go ask, did anyone hear anything?
Okay. And it might be possible, just my opinion, that he wasn't beat there. It could have happened somewhere else, and they brought him back to the apartment. Possible. Okay.
It is possible because we found much later, the police did do a search warrant on the vehicle. And for some reason, I was actually like on the back porch, just like talking to Brandon, and his vehicle was parked in the back. And I went out there and I looked and I found a bloody Visa card under the passenger seat, his Visa card with blood on it under the seat. And that made me start like looking more, and I look at the floor mats, and then all of a sudden I can see this like red sticky stuff. And I just look a little bit closer and I'm like, oh, I think that's blood. And then when I saw that, I started looking at all the mats, the carpet under the seats, and then I start finding blood everywhere.
Wow. So, I mean, I probably know the answer to this. Are you satisfied with their investigation into the death of your son?
Absolutely not. I think this is just a gross miscarriage of justice. I think the police department is an embarrassment to police departments everywhere. This, when we get into how they close the case,
Mm-hmm.
this is bad. Crimes were committed to close Brandon's case.
Yeah, and you know what? I totally agree with that. And again, a young man who showed his love and courage for this country went into the Navy. So I'm thinking he's a veteran. Leave no stone unturned to find out what happened to this man, because heaven is backing me up. He didn't beat his damn self to death. He didn't do that.
No, he didn't.
And as Tanya said, it seemed as if they was intentionally trying to contaminate the crime scene. Now, with Cassandra, I don't know if she has some connection with the police department or something is just not right. And we know there's more than just your hunch and some evidence that leads you to believe that Cassandra is responsible for your son's death. And I believe that she is responsible for your son's death 1,000,000%. In all fairness, we reached out to Cassandra. We called her job. She's no longer employed there. And I asked the lady how long had she been gone or was terminated. She said, I think about a week or two now. And I asked her, could she tell me why? And she said, no, And I said, well, were you all aware that at one time she was a person of interest in the homicide? So the lady immediately gave me someone's name and said, let me send you to him. And so when I spoke with him, he says, well, because of the HIPAA law, I can't say anything. So, and I'm going to let you tell about the other guys and why we think what we think. Every time I find out where she's working, I'm going to make that call. Every time. Because I don't think, especially at a nursing home, I don't think Cassandra should be allowed to babysit a damn goldfish.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call. And if she's working, I promise you she's going to get fired. It's, as far as I'm concerned, the case is not closed. And Cassandra should still be a person of interest because she has a history that kind of connects with your son's death, right?
Yes. And, without people having all of the information, I will say that, and this information is out there, and what we say we can back up. But exactly. I feel she is dangerous, and I feel that anyone in her immediate vicinity should be aware of who and what they're dealing with. I think people should be able to protect themselves. I think that this is just a dangerous person that they did by trying to cover up my son's murder. They have let a dangerous person potentially continue to do what she's doing, and exactly. It is bad.
Exactly. And one of our sources, and always on the money when they go and investigate things, they learned that she's had some men in her past.
Yes.
Some of those men got sick when she was there, and if I remember correctly, the symptoms for each were always pretty close.
Yes.
And with your son's death, she tells someone what's going on with her, but what she's really doing is describing how she killed Brandon.
Yes.
And so some of the men in the past will probably label her as a would-be serial killer.
Yes. I really think she needs to be looked into closely.
Exactly. I mean, I totally agree with that. So, we was talking about this, and someone says, okay, well, why would she do it if she's not in it for the money? Well, the answer is simple. It's for the thrill.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that makes her day. I believe she might practice voodoo. I don't know. I consider her to be evil and a witch, straight from hell. She is a habitual liar. She fakes up illnesses, right?
Yes. What I've become aware of what she does, she told me that she had MS. And then I became aware of someone else that I strongly feel that she has been poisoning for many years, and they have symptoms of MS. So she then says that she has MS, or maybe another person that she has affected would say that they had kidney disease. So then she says that she has kidney disease. So she's inflicting what, my speculation, what I have found, what it to me leads me to believe is that she is poisoning people, and then these symptoms that they get, she says that she has.
So I mean, and that's baffling too. And I'm thinking that's her way of enjoying what she did. She's kind of mocking her victims.
Yeah, and actually, when you say that, I remember talking to her. I talked to her extensively for 10 months, messaging. Um, she usually did it over Facebook, whether it was Facebook Messenger or Facebook audio, but I did talk to her quite a bit. And I remember that she kept talking about getting food poisoning in April. And I think now what she was doing was fishing for me to talk about the times that Brandon was sick and Brandon was in the hospital. Because about every 2 months, Brandon was having to seek medical attention. And that started in February. He went to work and he was in this like altered state. So the work said that he was kind of like nodding off, like kind of just really he was falling unconscious. And they sent him to another site. So he had to have been well enough to drive, but they sent him to go do a urine drug screening. He stopped at McDonald's to get food, and at the McDonald's, he was vomiting out by his truck. He had severe abdominal pain, and they said he was actually laid back in his truck screaming. I think the screaming was from the abdominal pain. And the EMS, one of the things, I mean, they wrote possible overdose, but they also wrote poisoning on that. I don't know what you call it, the EMS dispatch page that they give to the hospital. They actually wrote the possible poisoning. And Brandon ends up in the ICU for 5 days with respiratory distress. They called it acute psychosis, but the issue that I have with them saying psychosis is that from what I can find, psychosis lists having delusions or hallucinations, and those weren't there. Brandon was falling unconscious, and respiratory failure and renal failure, kidney failure. And he was in there for 5 days. They let him out. 2 months later, he's in an ambulance going back to the ER, falling unconscious, abdominal pain. Then 2 months later, he goes to urgent care. He's continuing to have a headache. He's there with the same symptoms. And then, so that was February, April, June, and then in August, he's texting me that he was basically violently throwing up for 2 entire days, passing out. And then again, the symptoms when he dies. So it sounds like he had acute poisoning each of these times.
And some of the men in her past have had the same symptoms.
Yes. Yes, we talked, and this goes all the way back more than 10 years ago. And that's a scary thought.
Exactly.
That's a long time span.
Exactly. You just didn't lay down and take what the medical examiner said and said, okay, you were going toe to toe with her on your son's death, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the issue with you and the medical examiner?
I just couldn't. Pneumonia did not explain his death to me. And also, I will say that there was some communication between the medical examiner, the detective, and my husband had also sent an email. And basically, to sum it up, it was like if the detective says they found something more, she can change the autopsy. And that bothers me because I feel like, in a sense, yes, they work together. The detective can provide the background, but medically, she should be able to back up what she says, because if she's saying everything is hinging on what the detective wants her to write, then I don't see how that really is like a valid medical opinion, because a detective's not really qualified to make medical judgments.
Exactly. And if that would be the case, then there would really be no need for her to perform an autopsy because the cop's going to tell her what to put down.
Yes.
So, did they find pneumonia in him?
She said there was a patch of pneumonia, and then later she said that it was almost his entire lungs. But I question, was this pneumonia or was this something that a poison could have caused? Um, I'm no medical person, so anybody who has information, let us know, like fill us in. But the autopsy said that his airways were clear. So I thought that was kind of strange that his airways were clear. And then I'm looking through the medical record, and it said that they did a test for pneumonia, a urine test for pneumonia, and it was negative.
Wow.
And the bruising, the bruising, he had internal bruising on his lung. And so there could have been contributing factors, hypothermia, all of these things. And from what I could find from the CDC, although like he could have pneumonia, those extenuating factors should have been listed.
Exactly. But how do they explain the black eyes? How do they explain that?
When I had a phone conversation with the medical examiner, and she just basically told me she couldn't fully explain his injuries. That was it. No explanation.
Well,
And
go ahead.
a huge problem with this is that if you've seen the photos of my son, they're quite shocking. So does this mean that, if they can do this with my son, that it's obvious that there is trauma, restraints, just, any number of horrific things that happened, someone with lesser injuries that has been murdered? Look how, if they can do this with a case that looks like Brandon's, just think about the cases that aren't as visually telling.
Exactly. Where is, to your knowledge, Cassandra right now?
I would have no idea. I thought that she had went home to Maine. Someone in Maine had said that she was there, but at this point, I would say there's no telling. From everything that I've gathered from Cassandra for the last 10 years, even when she was in a relationship with people, she would take off. And so a lot of times she's not where she says she is. So
Okay. Uh, we do know that, well, I guess the police had her phone at one time, right?
yes.
But something you told me today that I didn't know about phones. Uh, what's going on with that?
So because when I would talk to Cassandra, she would say, "Oh, that's my other phone," or she would answer another phone. And then she also told me in messages that she had got new phones. Both her and this other female, Olivia, said that right after Brandon died, they had got new phones, that they had lost their phones. It would change between got new phones, lost phones, things like that. Um, because they would say they didn't have any photos, they couldn't remember what dating app they met on. Just a lot of stories changing. But Cassandra told me that she had burner phones, and she told me one of the burner phones that it wasn't working correctly. So then she was getting another phone. And it's true, she has multiple phones.
So,
So if the police, if they're doing a search warrant on her phone, which phone did she have with her? If they're trying to find out where she was, she could have taken a different phone the day that she went to talk to the police, or not her usual phone when she was at Brandon's apartment. And she did say that she was at Brandon's apartment the 7th on his birthday. She tells different accounts of how long she waited for him. She said that she was waiting in the parking lot, but she stated that she was there in Asheboro, September 7th.
so how many times did the detective speak with her that you know of?
After they got the search warrant on my son's phone, I believe they called both Cassandra and Olivia. And then I kept sending things to the detective. I sent several recordings, and I don't know if they didn't listen to them or they didn't bother looking at the crime scene photos, but all of these recordings had guilty knowledge of the crime scene. And he said that he wanted to have her come in, and she called me. She was really stressed out because they wanted to interview her, and that was in November. So then she tells me that she's basically going to lie to them and say that she can't make it by saying she's sick or has a doctor's appointment. And then the next day he tells me that she didn't come in because that's what she did. She said, I can't remember if she said she was sick or she had a doctor's appointment, but she did that. But they do end up interviewing her in December. And that was the only time they interviewed her. And the male detective, I know that he thought that she was involved because he told me that he had the support of the Darlington police.
Who
and
did?
then it changed.
Who had the support?
Detective Sudeth, the male detective that was on the case.
Mm.
And then things changed. And, there was an article from the criminal investigation supervisor put out to the local newspaper information about Brandon's case, which it was very reckless of this reporter. Her name was Jamie Biggs, and she wrote an article for the Courier Tribune, which is a local paper in Asheboro, and where Cassandra had all of that guilty knowledge of the crime scene. This reporter got the autopsy and just started putting all kinds of details from the autopsy investigative report into the news article. And then and again, if you see the photos of the bathroom, you will see it was just wrecked. And the criminal investigation supervisor said that there were no signs of a struggle. And he also said that although Brandon's death was unusual, they were not investigating it as a homicide. And this was after Detective Sudeth was taken off the case.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. So later on in the investigation, the medical examiner changed the cause of death?
Yes. So I went in, and after Detective Johnson took over the case, I told her about Brandon being in the hospital in February, which I thought was really strange. And so somehow I guess the seed gets planted with her that he took something. Mm-hmm. So then she tells me that they found synthetic marijuana in Brandon's apartment. And at this time, I don't have crime scene photos. I don't have the evidence log. I do have the search warrants. And I knew that there was no drug listed. They did, I think on one thing they said that they took like a marijuana scale and cup, but there's no such thing as a marijuana scale. There's just a scale. But I don't know, maybe the sheet actually just said scale and cup, but there were no substances taken as far as the search warrants. And I told her, I said, well, I don't know if you found synthetic marijuana, but if you did, it wasn't Brandon's. It could have been like from a girlfriend or something. I said, but Brandon wasn't taking synthetic marijuana. And then when I left that meeting, I start finding out more about synthetic marijuana,
Mhm.
what it does, this kind of thing. And I start talking to his friends. His friends told me absolutely not, that he would think that was dangerous. He wouldn't tell anyone to take that. And they also, like, Brandon had been drug testing for work. All of his drug tests were clear, even when he went in the hospital on February. In fact, each time he had to seek medical attention, his drug tests were clear. And finally, after the case is closed, I get the crime scene photos, the evidence log, everything. There's no synthetic marijuana. There was never any mention of synthetic marijuana until right before Detective Johnson decided to close the case. And what she did was she told me that they found it in his apartment and it was illegal in North Carolina. Then she then she talked to the medical examiner. The medical examiner amends the autopsy to say that he purportedly took a substance before he died and changes the autopsy then to undetermined. And I later asked the medical examiner, did she give you some kind of proof, or did she just call you up and you just changed the autopsy to say he took a drug that didn't exist?
Okay, so was the synthetic marijuana found in his system?
Nope. They
Only,
did
go ahead.
they did a toxicology test. The initial toxicology test, I talked to the state toxicologist, and he said that they check thousands and thousands of compounds and that I could feel fairly certain there was no synthetic marijuana. He said nothing is absolute, just because of how, just like the drugs keep changing before their tests are made. But he said I could feel fairly certain that there were no compounds of synthetic marijuana found in his system. And then they do a second test where they specifically test for synthetic cannabis, and it's negative.
Okay, so I honestly don't think that they found any synthetic marijuana.
No, they didn't. And that's falsifying evidence. That
Exactly,
is saying something existed that didn't exist.
exactly. And I know we're going to bring you back because this is extremely long. Uh,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
no, you're good. With Cassandra, I want us
Hmm.
tonight to get as much information out tonight on this feed that we can. So if someone recognizes her or she's applying for a job, uh, whoever you are, I wish you would just said no. She's a serial killer. Don't give it to her, because as long as, in my opinion, she is breathing free air, she's a serious threat to anyone she comes in contact to, because she don't want money for killing or making people sick. The thrill is her just doing it.
Yes.
And
She she does so many of these classic symptoms of serial killer. Anyone that knows these things, injecting herself in the case, contacting the family, dangling clues, asking me if I had found Brandon's dog tags. I think she had them. I think she had them all along. Which is keeping trophies. I think she keeps trophies from victims. She, I'm not really coming at this in any malicious intent, but I do think she's a danger to society. She's a danger to people in, wherever she is, people are sick, dying, or dead, and she is the common denominator.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, we believe that she may be using a fake name now, but her Facebook account is down. Okay. Another red flag. Okay. To find out more information about your son's case, and what are some of the sites they can go to?
Brandon's Voice on Facebook has a lot of the photographs, evidence logs. You can see a lot about his case on Facebook, Brandon's Voice. And then there's a Justice for Brandon Embry, which is just basically a collection of the TikTok videos that I copied over to that Facebook page. And then there's the TikTok page, and then the Instagram has some. I just haven't had a lot of time to stay on the Instagram, but I'll try to keep doing with that. And I hope to start a YouTube so that I can start loading some of these podcasts and things to that YouTube channel for him as well.
Okay. Well, we are here with you until you get the justice that you deserve and your son deserves. This case again is extremely baffling because the woman has to know somebody at this police department, and I'm gonna say it, but I'm not in agreement with it. So if you have any information on it, then you need to call the police department. But I would rather you call me because I just don't trust them, because this was a crime scene from day one, and it was not treated like a crime scene. Then you have an idiot cop standing on evidence. I mean, what spirit makes her do that? So they just didn't, unless that's the way this police department operates. And if it is normal for them, then everybody at that police department needs to turn in their badge and their damn gun, because they're a threat to society as well.
So someone asked me today, because I have new evidence, with what is going on with what she's been up to. And they said, have you taken this to the police? And I thought, well, they took the evidence in my son's case, and Detective Johnson destroyed all of the DNA evidence in my son's case. And his fingernails could have been tested. She had them destroyed. All of the DNA evidence in my son's case, she destroyed, as well as some physical items. And I had asked for everything to be returned to me. I wasn't given an opportunity to appeal, to ask for everything to be retained. I assumed it would be retained just from watching forensic files and things like that,
Exactly.
where they're pulling up DNA from 20 years prior, but she had it destroyed. So when I found the blood in my truck, or I'm finding new evidence, I don't feel that I can take it to that police department. And honestly, a lot of this evidence is crossing state lines. These people are in different states. So, anyone that knows any case that's similar to Brandon's, something happened in Ohio. I think something happened in Colorado. Definitely in Maine, South Carolina, and there's no telling how many states that she's been in and where she would actually go.
Exactly. Incidentally, her picture is on our community section of this channel. It is also on our Injustice Investigations Facebook page, and you can get more details on her and about this case. Now, if there's anything that we can do, to help you on this end, you already know that we will be more than happy to do it. This is really an embarrassment to that police department for the way they handled this, because this was not a thorough investigation. I don't know if maybe they don't know how to do it. I don't know. Maybe they may be cops. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's
I
not,
mean, with
and
body
it's,
sight, ma'am, go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
and it's also like when we went to a meeting with the police department, they said that they talked to the DA about Brandon's case. And I went in and I talked to the DA. And the DA, they're people that tell the law enforcement, well, you need more evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I go in and I'm telling them about Brandon's case, and they're entertaining this, well, maybe he did take something and it metabolized. And I'm like, there's absolutely no evidence of that. There's no witness. There's no person to say he was taking any kind of drug. He didn't make it out of the apartment, and there was no drug there. There was no drug found, no drug in the crime scene photos, and it wasn't on the toxicology. So there absolutely was no synthetic marijuana. And there's all these signs that he's being poisoned. And not only so, we've got the DA. I mean, it's just Randolph County, the DA's office, the Asheboro Police Department. And at one point, as psychopaths often do, they like to taunt and dangle clues. My
Mm-hmm.
daughter received a message on Facebook that said, I killed your brother. And I am pretty sure that she sent that message because she has a quirk where she adds random S's to her words. And the message before I killed your brother was written that way. And I think that's her. And they didn't do anything. No one did.
Very,
They,
very well possible. Yeah, very. So, with maybe he took something. That's not how the system works. Well, maybe he took something. Either he did or he didn't. Either it's in his blood or it's not.
yes,
So,
exactly. I talked to a person who does autopsy reviews because I'm going to need to have an autopsy review for Brandon. And he told me basically, if there's no evidence of drug use or some kind of reason that they would have, that if there's nothing to back it up, it should not be on the autopsy.
that's it. That's it. That is it. Okay. They gave me an extra 30 minutes. Whoopee. uh, we'll talk tomorrow, you and I, and our source, and figure out what day to bring you back on. And because we're going to help you get to justice again that you all deserve. This is an embarrassment and an insult, especially when you treat a veteran like this.
And also, you have to look at this person is, I don't know if I should say her age, but
Yes, you're good.
she has a lot of life ahead of her. And if this has been going on for 10 years and she has many decades ahead of her and she isn't stopped or she isn't thoroughly investigated,
Mm-hmm.
that's a real danger to society.
Exactly. Exactly. And what's worse than this is if a lot of police officers are handling cases like this where she should have been considered a suspect, there may be some people she's already killed. We just don't know about
Exactly.
Okay. Breathing's messing up. That's my cue. I got to get out of here. As always, thank you all for tuning in to our show tonight. Be as Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow night. We just got a new 800 number. I don't know what the heck it is, but it's up on our YouTube channel and our Justice Investigation Facebook page. If you have any information, please give us a call. And look, I don't need your name. We just need your information. Sarah, is there anything else you want to address before we leave tonight?
No, thank you. I appreciate you spending this time with me and talking about Brandon's case. I just hope that people see it, and I do think that there are going to be cases
I do too.
connected to her.
I do. I do. And so, is there any type of specific work that she's known to do?
No, something that, the only thing when you said that strikes me is she would talk about her job, or she told me that she worked in a domestic violence center. And again, this is how she projects. So if you look at that situation, Brandon looked like he was a severe victim of domestic violence. It was in the household. She was supposedly his girlfriend, and he's beaten all over his body. So then she says that she is a domestic violence. And people keep trying to look for a license a license for her. And she says that she's a nurse. She will tell people that she was a nurse for the prison system, that she's a head nurse, that she has a master's degree in psychology, a master's degree in nursing. But the scary thing is that I think sometimes she refers to people like Brandon, what happened to Brandon, as a job. And it reminds me of the BTK, where he referred to his victims as projects, but she calls them jobs. And it's very disturbing.
Wow. So, I mean, what's her whole name? Her whole name?
Cassandra J. Welch.
J. Welch. Okay. Okay. So we might want to keep our eyes open for nursing homes.
It could be Welch or Gainey, and she uses a lot of aliases, many aliases.
Okay. And incidentally, we also reached out to her mother. Did not answer. So we try to be fair. We give people an opportunity to tell their side, because we don't do one-sided stories. But all we can do is ask. And if you say no or you don't respond, then that's just that. Lisa Lowe says her behavior will only escalate if that's the case. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
It will. And so she needs to be brought to justice extremely fast. But I really think that police department really needs, the whole thing needs to be investigated, because if this is where they operate normally, they part of the problem. Okay, we've lost Sarah. I don't know. Maybe she had a meeting. I don't know. But we're gonna get out of here. As always, we thank you all for watching our show tonight. I'm Al Scott with Injustice Investigation. Remember, I'm not always right, and you are not always wrong. So be it. The Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow night. I think that's a show coming up of a black man that was dragged out of his vehicle by police officers. He's a paraplegic. I saw the video. Many of you probably saw it. They was pulling a young man by his hair. Louisiana State police officers' names remain in public in the negative for the past 3 or 4 months. But this is nothing new. There are many incidents within the state police department that the public don't know about. And we're going to talk about one of those issues maybe tomorrow night, of when a young lady called me and asked me to listen to the voice mail of her sons. A white state trooper had left on his phone. And she began to monitor her son, and that he was staying on the phone rather long throughout the night. And it wasn't a girl, it was this guy. And so he turned out to be a state trooper who had a fetish. I'm Al Scott with Injustice Investigations. You all enjoy your